There is but one El, the great I Am, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. And today, in today's reading, He is going to reveal that to us. He is going to tell us, I appear on the scene of the universe. Take notice. Because my name is above all names. And when the God of heavens, the God of earth, the one who has made everything, El Gabor, King of Kings, appear on the scene, the world takes notice. Pharaoh took notice. He didn't get it, but he took notice. And so the kings of this world gathered together this week, but they will take notice of this name. They might not get it, like Pharaoh in the past, but they will get it. They might not get it, but they will recognize it, and they will realize, and they will see it. Because this week's Torah portion is, and He appeared. He appeared on the scene of the world. He appeared on the scene of the economy. He appeared on the scene of the politics. He appeared on the scene of the social order. He appeared and changed it. And they had to take notice thereof. So, just a quick reminder that the slides are available, part of the YouTube link. There's a little Dropbox link there as well. So the slides are available, not just of this teaching, but all of the other teachings, should you be interested in them. But obviously, our Father is ever present, and He can be approached at any point in time by any person. But He does have His big cycles. And in those big cycles, there are moments in time that's just sort of more special than others for specific different reasons. And so this week, when we're going to read about Him appearing, then we have to ask the question now, look, what was the context in which He appeared, and what was the consequences of Him appearing? And what should we then learn about that, about a possible future appearance? And what would be the parallels? So we find this Torah portion's reading in the first couple of verses of Exodus 6. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe and said to him, I am Jehovah, and I appeared. From where we get the reading's name today, Vayera, and I appeared. But it is Jehovah speaking. So it is, and Jehovah appeared on the scene. Now it's very difficult for us mortals to imagine the spiritual ramifications of that sentence. And the Creator of the universe, the name above all names, the big I Am, appeared on the scene. But we have to realize that when the name above all names, the King of Kings, the God of gods, appeared on the scene, there's a monumental shift in the spiritual reality of that time. And He said, and I appeared from Ra'ah, which means to see. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they were able to see Him through a specific lens. Moses was able to see Him through a specific lens. And we are able to see Him through a specific lens because He made Himself available. I appeared to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov as El Shaddai. And by my name, Jehovah, was I not known to them. And so, right off the bat, there's a bit of a contentious issue here. Did Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob not knew His name? Is that the real issue? Shall we nitpick Torah and say and fight each other, did they know His name, did they not know His name, and all that kind of stuff, when that's not the real issue? The issue is, our Father is making reference to Genesis 17 and is reminding Moses of Genesis 17, where he established the covenant. And he says, and it came to be when Abraham was 99 years old that Jehovah appeared to Abraham and said to him, I am El Shaddai. So when we read these verses in the Torah portion of Genesis 6 and says, and I will appear as El Shaddai to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, Moses made the connections to Genesis 17. Now obviously Genesis 17 didn't exist at that point in time yet, but he knew of that event. And we have to make that cross-link to Genesis 17. So it's not about them knowing his name or not. It is about the spiritual connection that is being conveyed. Moses, I appeared to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob as El Shaddai. I am the all-sufficient mighty one. I am the one that pour out gifts, or the dispenser of gifts. I am the giver of a family. I am the giver of babies when you should not have any babies. I am the giver of land when you should not have land. I am the giver of a family when you should not have a family. I am the provider, naturally and abnormally, in abnormal ways. And I established my covenant with Abraham and then with Isaac and Jacob. Genesis 17 being the core. So Moses is reminded that when our Father spoke to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, he spoke to them as El Shaddai, the great provider, the all-sufficient mighty one. But El Shaddai is a title. It's not a name. It's a title that refers to what a person, or in this case our Father, is doing his job. Doctor does doctory things. Reverends do reverently things. So that's a title that refers to what does a person do. And other titles. It's not his name. So he's reminded of what our Father did. And it was not an issue about whether they knew his name or not knew his name. But just on that specific issue, it's very clear that they did knew his name. Several places, countless places, which I'm not going to read everything. Genesis 12 and 13 and 15, the entire Genesis 15, 21, 26, every time speaks about them having a very good knowledge of the name, our Father speaking to them with that name and them calling upon the name. But the issue in Exodus 6, when he says, I appeared to him as El Shaddai, is to say, I've established a covenant where I'm the all-sufficient Almighty One in which I have provided everything in order to maintain and uphold this covenant. There's nothing else to be added to this covenant. I'm the all-sufficient one. Even in the grammar of that specific, Hebrew grammar of that specific piece, it is clear. I'm not going to go into very much detail here, but the verb, I was not known, is in what is called the nifal verb tense, or form of the verb, which is basically a simple passive. It does not say that they didn't know his name. Basically, this is not the issue at stake at the moment. The issue at the stake at the moment is that he appeared to them as El Shaddai, providing a covenant with all the conditions and all the clauses already provided. Now that's the starting point, Moses. From here on, we're going to take it forward. The issue is the giving of the covenant and what emerges from it. So what is the real issue? The real issue is embedded in that very title. And Jehovah appeared to Moses as his name. Now it's about the identity of the Father that's at stake. Not Him being the El Shaddai, providing everything, putting all the conditions of the covenant in place, but it is about Him as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh and what the name entails. We also know that we are in this countdown to Passover. And we're actually part of the Passover story. And that in the Passover story, the bone of contention is the name. There are many gods. And many people claim many gods. And many gods can provide, or that's what's claimed. But there's one name, the one that we just sang about. That's the bone of contention. Moses, this is the battle line. This is the issue that you're going to have to confront Moses, Pharaoh with. Then at that point in time, as well as in the future, we find this confirmation of the appearance of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh on the scene, basically in the next verse, Exodus 6 verse 4. And I established my covenant, because my name is tied to the covenant. So in the calling and the communication with Moses, we're in a much higher gear now. Establishing the covenant, El Shaddai, Him providing everything. You remember the story. Abraham was asleep effectively when the covenant giving process was happening. He was not really even part of it because of the all-sufficient nature of our Father. But now, it is about the name and the relationship of a people, a group, a collective with that name. And so the stakes are much higher. He's also saying that in this collection of people, you are in a society, in a group, in a milieu where there are many fake gods. Egypt with all its gods. There are many fake gods. But those fake gods are one-sided. You just have to do one thing the whole time to these fake one-sided gods. But there's this other one, the name above all names, the Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh name, the relationship name, who desires worship and set apartness. And so Moses is being introduced to this whole process, and through Moses then we can also hear the words of the Messiah inviting us into a relationship, and we can see ourselves also in this process being invited into this relationship. But there's a political, social, economic system within which the people are called Egypt. And it is this messy overlap between a name above all names, set apart, a people that's called by His name through the covenant, and the context, which is pretty messy. And so things are about to get ugly. And that's the scene that our Father is giving us from the opening verses of Exodus 6. With Him appearing on the scene, changing everything of that dispensation as we knew it. But the name is to reappear. And we know that the Torah is prophecy. Yes, it happened historically, but it's also prophecy. And so we have to be cognizant and take careful notice of what happened there, because it's going to happen again. And we can learn from it for our own edification. We read in Isaiah 46, "Remember the former things of old, for I am El, and there is no one else, the name above all names, the King of kings, the Prince of all princes. And there is no one like me, declaring the end from the beginning," a very well-known piece of scripture. "From of old, that which has not yet been done." In other words, It will be in the end as it was in the beginning. Learn from the beginning in order for your edification for the end. My counsel does stand, and all my delight I do, calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a distant land. Indeed, I have spoken it, I also bring it to pass. The one who is, who was, and who will be. I have planned it, I also do it. Listen to me. You stubborn-hearted, who are far from righteousness. I shall bring my righteousness near. It is not far off. Can you see the contrast? You stubborn-hearted, who are far from righteousness, but I shall bring my righteousness near. It is not far off. And my deliverance, my Yeshua, is not delayed. And I shall give deliverance in Zion, my esteem to Israel. As it was, so it will be. You stubborn-hearted, who are far from righteousness. Well, that's Israel in the past, in the beginning, but also Israel in the future. His people in the future. And therefore, it's also an instruction to be very humble before our Father. Because our own righteousness is nothing. Because we don't have that out of our own works or what we can do. We are far from righteousness. But I shall bring my righteousness near, it is not far off, and my deliverance, it is not delayed. So the return from exile in the past, but the return from exile in the future. Johan spoke about the exiles a lot last week. There's an exile in the past, there's a return from exile in the future. Everything prophesied. And my deliverance, Yeshua, the Passover in the past, and I shall give my deliverance in Zion, a Passover in the future. And so we see the past and the future dovetailing each other, overlaying each other. But where have we seen these things happen before? Exodus 6, 7, 8, 9. So we can go back to those verses and see but what has happened in order to understand it going forward. We also read in a very well-known piece in Jeremiah 16. Therefore see, the days are coming, declare Jehovah, when it is no longer said, Jehovah lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of Egypt, but Jehovah lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the lands where he has driven them, also where we are today, and the rest of the world. That he will call them. See, I am sending for many fishermen, declares Jehovah, and they shall fish them. Can we just stand still and say, thank you, Abba, for sending a fisherman to us? Everybody here today, there was a fisherman sometime in our lives, perhaps more than one, to drag us back, to bring us back to him. And praise Abba for sending those fishermen. And after that I shall send many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and every hill and out of every holes of the rocks. Thank you for hunting after us, for searching for us. And even those friends and family members and beloved ones whom we know that does not know our Messiah Yeshua, who does not know salvation yet, that we can pray, send your hunters to them, bring them, hunt for them out of every hole and every rock, and bring them back. For my eyes are on their ways, and they have not been hidden from my face. What a comforting verse. They have not been hidden from my face, nor has their crookedness been hidden from my eyes. But he will send the fishermen, he will send the hunters after those people. He sent them after us. What grace, what kindness, what love. May he do so also for our beloved ones. O Jehovah, my strength and my stronghold and my refuge. In the day of distress, the Gentiles shall come to you from the ends of the earth, even where we are today, and the many other places around the world where people have gathered. Our fathers have inherited only falsehood, futility, and there is no value in them. Would a man make mighty ones for himself, which are not mighty ones? What a confession. Yes, we have had many mighty ones, idols, in and among ourselves, in the society where we are. May we have the spiritual insight to recognize those idols and call them idols as what they are, and distance ourselves from them. Therefore, see, I am causing them to know, this time I cause them to know my hand and my might. Our Father is to reappear, and they shall know that my name is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the name above all names. And so, yes, we are longing for this moment in time where He will reveal Himself, where He will reappear. But before then, we know also that there has been many plagues in Egypt to deal with the idols. And so it will also be in our situation. So a bit to contemplate about. He appeared to our fathers as El Shaddai, but as a title, as to what He did. But to Moses and the Hebrews in the unfolding Passover story, as His name, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. During and at the end of the greater Exodus, He will appear and be revealed as the name above all names again. And hence that is going to be such a bone of contention. By looking forward to the future Sukkot, transition always happens at Passover. Passover is a time of decision making. Passover is a time of the great revealing. That's where you say, whose God is your God and my God? It is the crime of the great battle, spiritual intensity. And also, therefore, we have to recognize the fact that the time leading up to Passover is the time that is filled with spiritual tension. When we read the news, when we hear the news, when we hear of world events, we should not stand cold as if it is just mere events that is taking place. It takes taking place within a very specific spiritual context where the battle lines are being drawn. And it's asking the question every single day. Who's the God we are serving? Because at Passover the battle lines are being drawn. It's at Passover where He will send His deliverer and where He has presented His deliverer to the world against the gods of the world. And yes, obviously, He reveals Himself at any point in time of any day of the year. And yes, we can draw to Him at any point in time at any of the year. But there are these big cycles that are happening every year. And so things are also fitting into that cycle that we have to take notice of. And that's why, because of what has been prophesied by Isaiah and Jeremiah and many others, that they are telling us, go back to the story of Egypt and look at that story and learn about it, because our journey is foretold in that, and learn from it. And so, we're going to look at that now. And Elohim spoke to Moshe and said to him, I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. I appeared to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov as El Shaddai, and by my name, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, was I not known. So who will reappear at the end? Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. And I also established my covenant. Whose covenant is it? It's His covenant. That's the battle line. With them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their sojournings, in which they have sojourned. And I have also heard the groaning of the children of Israel from the Mitzrayites are enslaving. Nothing new. Hear the groaning. And I have remembered my covenant, What will you be remembering in future? His covenant. Say therefore to the children of Israel, I am Jehovah. So to whom is this book addressed? To the children of Israel. So if you want to be part of this Passover story, if you want to be part of what has just been said, you need to identify with the children of Israel. Otherwise it's not written to you. And immediately we see a battle line appearing, a fault line. If you do not associate with, one way or another, with the children of Israel, then everything that is promised here becomes a big issue. And I shall bring you out from under the burden of the Egyptians, and I shall deliver you from their enslaving, and I shall redeem you with an outstretched arm, and with a great judgment, and shall take you as my people, and I shall be your Elohim. That's our Father's terms of reference. That's what He will do. And what must we do? And you shall know that I am Yodeh Vaveh, your Elohim. His job, our job. It's easier said than done, though, because that, and you shall know, is not mere intellectual knowledge. I know Yodeh Vaveh is the Creator God. That know is to apply His principles, His law, His Torah, His precepts in our daily lives, to serve and to worship Him, as we will see shortly. It is Him who is bringing you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. And I shall bring you into the land which I swore to give Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, to give you as an inheritance. I am Yodeh Vaveh. I link my name to this. Do not try to change this according to ideology, dogma, doctrine, or anything. It is about the covenant, the seed, and its land. And Moses spoke to the children of Israel, but they did not listen to Moshe. And that is the sad tragedy, because that's also true today. They did not listen to Moses. Because of the shortness of spirit, which means to become impatient, short-sighted, blinded, spiritually numb. Because they became spiritually numb, spiritually blinded, spiritually short-sighted, they did not listen to Moses. And from hard slavery, as it is today. And the last part of that section is, and Jehovah spoke to Moses saying, go in, speak to Pharaoh. So what did Father tell Moses? He said, I'm sending you to the brothers, to Israel. Go speak to them. He didn't listen. After that, he says, okay, now go to Pharaoh. Now we remember the story much about him dealing with Pharaoh and the plagues. That's sort of the big thing that we always remember about the Passover story. But there was this precursor, there was this thing just before, when Moses actually tried to convince and address the people themselves, but they didn't listen because of the shortness of the spirit. And then, because of the shortness of the spirit, he had to go and deal with Pharaoh, the sovereign of Egypt, to let the children of Israel go off the land, off his land. And Moses spoke before Jehovah, saying, the children of Israel have not listened to me. And why would Pharaoh listen to me? My goodness, if my own people don't listen to me, what's the chance of Pharaoh listening to me? I mean, like zero. For I am of uncircumcised lips. And Jehovah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron and gave them the command for the children of Israel and for Pharaoh, sovereign of Egypt, to bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. To come out of Egypt is a command. It's not a request for the children of Yodeh Vaveh. It must happen. Why must it happen? By hook or by crook, it must happen. Because his name is attached to the covenant that says it. Therefore, it must happen. It is a command. You can fight it, you can ignore it, or in humility, wait for it. But it is going to happen, because it has been commanded. So the promises our Father gave to Moses were the following. I will bring you out. I will rescue you from bondage. I will redeem you. I will take you as my people. I will be your God. I will bring you into the land. I will give you as a heritage. We've just read that. Those are the promises that He made. Any of these changed? Nothing has changed. All of those promises are still true today. But why did the people not listen to Moses? Why were they not able to recognize him and recognize his message? In their shortness in spirit, they have lost their devotion and their set-apartness. They knew who they were. They knew they were children of Israel, biologically. But in their spiritual numbness, in their short-sightedness of spirit, they've lost their devotion and set-apartness. So here's a people in a context of messiness of Egypt. They know who they are, but because of the context, they've lost that unique devotion to the one true God. And they followed after idols of Egypt. We read about that in Ezekiel 20. Whole piece in Ezekiel 20. Let me just read a few, that which is underlined. Nor did they forsake the idols of Egypt. They did not forsake the idols of Egypt. So I resolved to pour out my wrath on them to complete my displeasure against them in the midst of the land of Egypt. And they had to go through the slavery. But I acted for my name's sake, that it should not be profound before the eyes of the Gentiles among whom they were. For my name's sake, I had to take them out. Before whose eyes I made myself known to them, I bring them out with the land of Egypt. So I took them out of the land of Egypt, and I brought them into the wilderness, and I gave them the laws and showed them my right rulings. I had to give that to them again, because they've lost that. Which if a man does, he shall live by them. So if you live by the Torah, if you does it, you shall live by them. And I also gave my Shabbats to be the sign between them and me, to know that I am Yodai Vavai, who sets them apart. I'm sure that everybody in this audience is very well familiar with the fact that the Shabbat is linked to the sign. But this is the context in which we are getting it. I mean, we know about this link between Shabbat and the signs, and that He has established it. But the context in which Ezekiel 20 is written is the idols in which Israel was. And that they forgot that. And the only way that He could reteach them that is to take them out. Because in and among Egypt, they become polluted, contaminated by the system of Egypt, and Egypt was too oppressive on them. And they had to be retaught what those right rulings are, which if a man does it, they shall live by it, with the Shabbat as the sign. So yes, the Shabbat as the sign is a key thing, but we should not lose the context within which it has been written. It's been written in the context of the idols of Egypt. And the people that are in among the idols of Egypt, who became short-sighted and spiritually numb, and lost their devotion and lost their set-apartness. So Moses, a type of Messiah, tried to his best to get the attention of his own people, but they did not listen to him because of the idols of Egypt. The idols led them to shortness of spirit among them. On the one hand, they were crying for deliverance, but they did not hear the voice and recognize the face of the deliverer. They were looking for the act of deliverance and not for the deliverer. Hence with it we have the split between the one who does things, El Shaddai, and the one who desires worship, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh desires worship. He desires a devotion. He desires a relationship. They were looking for the hand of God, the deliverance, but they missed His face. They couldn't see Him. They couldn't recognize Him because of the idols. They were too entangled in the system. And because they were too entangled in the system, Moses had to go and deal with Pharaoh. He had to destroy Pharaoh in order to get his people out. So idolatry leads to spiritual numbness or short-sightedness also among Father's people. So we have to ask a very hard question, and that is, which idols today are giving us shortness of spirit, making us spiritually blind? Which idols are standing in the way of us hearing the voice of the Messiah? Which idols today are standing in the way that makes us only crying for deliverance, but not seeking the deliverer and seeking to worship Him? Are we seeking His deliverance, or are we seeking to worship the deliverer? And so Moses was taking that forward. Quite a heavy message. Taking that forward and say, my people are crying for deliverance, but they're rejecting me, the deliverer. Now I have to go and deal with the entire system. Does that remind you of something that might happen in future? The place near you? Yeah, I think so. Where we are standing here and have to acknowledge the fact and be humble before our Father and repent and say, yes, we're crying for deliverance out of the mess we are in, but we still are hanging on to the idols that we treasure. And we're blind that we can't see those idols because of the context that we are in. So the system has to be destroyed. And so Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh appears to Pharaoh to destroy a system that consumed his people. As it was, so it will be. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, go and speak to Pharaoh, sovereign of Egypt, and let the children of Israel go out of his land. But I am going to harden the heart of Pharaoh. And that is a very interesting, I skip a couple of verses there, but that's a very interesting statement. And I will harden the heart of Pharaoh. The question can rightfully be asked, is a merciful God? Can't He soften the heart of Pharaoh? Can't He change Pharaoh around? He's the Almighty. There's nothing that He cannot do. Can't He do that and save Pharaoh and his people and everybody else? Something that I've recently learned, that within the type of the verb, the way the verb is formulated there, is in what is called the Hiphil sense, which is causative active, which means it is the result of something else. Basically what that means is Father will harden Pharaoh's heart because Pharaoh is hardening his heart first. Because Pharaoh is hardening his heart, Father will harden its heart. If you ask for something, you will get it. It is a result of an ongoing pattern. The end result is, because of Pharaoh's ongoing, constant hardening, that the Father will give him what he's asking for. So even to Pharaoh, he is giving what Pharaoh is asking for. You're asking for a hardened heart? You'll get a hardened heart. Up to the point of death, plague 10. If we go through the plagues, plague 3, but the heart of Pharaoh was hardened. Plague 4, but the Pharaoh's heart was hard, but Pharaoh hardened his heart. Plague 5, the heart of Pharaoh was hardened. Plague 6, And Jehovah hardened the heart of Pharaoh. The first 5 plagues, Pharaoh hardened his heart. The last 5 plagues, Jehovah hardened the heart of Pharaoh. He gave him what he asked. If Pharaoh changed his mind after, say, plague 3 or 4 or whatever, and say, I will let your people go and I'll stay with my word and I'll be honest and true to what I'm saying and I've got a real genuine change, and because you are the only mighty one, you are Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the name above all names. What would have been the end result? We don't know, we can speculate. But if it happened before plague 6, there might have been salvation for Pharaoh. But he got what he was asking for. I am reminded of the fact that in this past week, this week that we've just had, was the World Economic Forum's annual meeting, where the princes of this world and Pharaoh, the one who controls the financial system, met. And I cannot not realize how parallel what is happening in the world system of economics and politics and social order parallels that with the Torah readings. The week that we are reading about this confrontation and Abba Father appearing as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the name above all names, the King of all kings, who has to destroy the system of Egypt in order to take his people away, the World Economic Forum is meeting and having their annual meeting, which I followed a little bit to what I could fathom and digest, to learn what they are prophesying about the future according to Pharaoh. And the parallels with Exodus 6, 7 and 8 is phenomenal. Thereby, I would not like to digress here and go on to a journey of what the World Economic Forum is doing and saying. Just wanted to show this one slide, that what we are talking about and how that is playing out in reality is one and the same thing. The Torah is alive, it's living Torah. So, and in the future rebellion, society is likely to reach the place where Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh will strengthen them in the evil they desire, as it was with Pharaoh. If society seeks to have or elect an evil king, it will reap the fruit from the heart of an evil king. Cannot get good fruit if the king is a bad king. If you pick a bad king, an evil king, a corrupt king, you will reap corruption. It was not an easy message to prepare, by the way. We find this also in the words of Paul. Therefore Elohim gave them up to the uncleanliness of their lust of their hearts, to disrespect their bodies among themselves. So he gave them up to that. If you persist in this, if you harden your way in this way, he gave you up in that. He will grant you that, if this is what you want. And even as they did not think it worthwhile to possess the knowledge of Elohim, Elohim gave them over to the worthless mind to do what is improper. Romans 12. I call upon you therefore, brothers, through the compassion of the Elohim, to present your bodies as living offerings, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim. And do not be conformed to this world, which was the problem with our fathers in Egypt. They conformed to the system. They conformed to the prevailing paradigm of the time. They adopted those idols. He says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And in Galatians, do not be led astray. Elohim is not mocked, for whatever a man sows, that he shall also reap. Because he who sows his own flesh shall reap corruption from the flesh, but he who sows to the Spirit shall reap everlasting life from the Spirit. And so what Moses is saying and what Paul is saying and what our Father is saying is one word. He has hardened Pharaoh's heart when Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he kept it hard against his people. And this is, if you want to have a hardened heart against my people, well, then I'll give it to you. I'll grant you that. And hence the change over from how it's presented to us in the first 5 plagues, with Pharaoh hardening his heart. But then, since you've asked it, I will give it to you. And he strengthened and hardened Pharaoh's heart. And so, within all of that, what is the bone of contention? I've mentioned it earlier, but let's just expand a little bit about it in this appearing battle line. It's about worship, the name above all names. We've just sang about it freely, loudly, exuberantly, in all joy. And it's fantastic. But that is the battle line. Because our fathers were called to go out in order to do what? Provide sacrifices and offering and service to Jehovah. He called them, and that's why he had to get them out of Egypt for worshipful service. Right through Exodus 8. So that, come, let my people go so that they can serve me. Let my people go because they must slaughter. Let my people go so that they can go and serve me. Let my people go so that they can serve me. Let my people go so that they can serve me. How many more times must he say that? That's also going to be the issue going forward. Service, worship, offering to him. And him being the only God, the name above all gods, not just one of many gods, but the set apart God, with his people being the set apart people, worshipping only one God. I imagine, and I'll show that shortly, that if you could have served him plus many other gods, then you would have been able to stay in Egypt. Because Egypt had many gods. Just adding another one is no issue. The issue is that it's the only one that needs to be served and worshipped. And in order to sort of understand that, we have to understand the social political order in Egypt. Because context is everything. You had farmers and slaves at the bottom layer of society. You've got craftsmen, soldiers, and scribes. You've got the priests and the nobles, and then the viziers, which is sort of the ministers, the senior government officials. And then Pharaoh at the top of the pyramid, who's the God of gods, seeing himself as God. And so within this societal structure, this command of let my people go came. This command did not come neutral of a specific organization, social and spiritual organization. It came within this very hierarchical system. And I think it's well known that Father dealt with a range of gods. Through all the plagues, I'm not going to read through all of them, but it addressed a range of different gods. That's what I'm saying. He could have added his name to this list, and it would have been okay. But being the unique one is the problem. But what is very interesting out of this pantheon is that the first one, water and blood, deals with the biophysical. The rest are environmental, of nature. Up to darkness, which is cosmological. And then the last one is dealing with the God of gods. Environmental, biophysical, cosmological. So whatever the idol is today in our world, the chances that it will be either of a biophysical nature, an environmental nature, or of a cosmological nature is very good. It might have a different face, it might be a different shape, it might look different, it might have different advocates for it, but the chances that it's one of those is very, very good. And it has to be broken down. And this system of biophysical, environmental, cosmological gods are being held together by the God of gods, Pharaoh, who is the supreme God in this pantheon. So this call to say, go out and serve, my people must go out and serve me, Yahweh, as the only unique, set-apart, Holy One, is not just rebellion from an Egyptian perspective, it's blasphemy from an Egyptian perspective. Because it challenges this entire structure. I mean, Pharaoh couldn't just say, okay, you go worship and come back. Because what is he doing? He's acknowledging that his pantheon is wrong. That this societal structure is wrong. He cannot acknowledge that. Because if he acknowledged that his divine order, according to his paradigm, if he acknowledged that the social order, according to his paradigm, is wrong, it jeopardizes his position as God of gods. So he could not let them go. Because if he allows them to go, this entire structure collapses. But it is this structure that kept the idols in place. It is the structure that was the strong man of the time to have enslaved the people of Israel to the extent that they worshipped idols. And that has robbed them from their uniqueness and made them spiritually blind and numb and short-sighted. So the structure must be destroyed by our Father in order to take the people out. It's very important, I think, to realize that the hardening of Pharaoh's heart was because he realizes that if we let them go, even for one day, let alone 3, let alone 30, whatever the case may be, is to acknowledge that their entire worldview is wrong. And he couldn't do that. The plot thickens. Genesis 46 we read, and Joseph said to his brothers, I am going up to inform Pharaoh, the men are shepherds. When Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? What you shall say, your servants have been men of livestock, so that you dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. So it's not just that he is asking the lowest of society to go into the wilderness to worship. They are not just the lowest, they are shepherds. They are abomination. They are farmers. They are the worst of the worst. So the lowest layer in society is challenging the highest layer of society, politically, socially, religiously, in every form and facet. The highest position as God is challenged. So this prevailing divine societal structure is challenged by those engaged in detestable things like agriculture, like having sheep. I mean, imagine that. You laugh, but you see the battle line. It's as light as daylight. I mean, it's these terrible people there at the bottom of this pyramid who owns sheep tells me there's one God and only one God. They must be mad. He cannot let them go. Because then he's acknowledging that these people at the bottom of the pyramid, that they are right. I mean, surely he can't do that. I mean, they're detestable and abominable acts like shepherds with livestock, and they slaughter them. How bad can you get? Anybody here who has ever had mutton? Don't answer. Okay. Can you see the appearing battle line? It's not really appearing, it's already there. We have just realized it. That Exodus 6 and 7, we're living it today. It's not just a story written 3,500 years today. It's our story, replaying itself. So Jehovah asks, of the lowest in society, and may I break the news to you, that includes you and me, to bring that which is their very best, that which with they sustain themselves and which characterize their profession, but that which is detestable to the princes of the world, as a sacrifice, as worship to him and him only. I mean, you can't get it more clear in terms of the opposing forces. Friends, Pharaoh just could not get it. In some sense, I can't blame him either. From his perspective, being the God of gods in this top of this pyramid, he could not understand that what God will ask the lowest in society to worship him. Does that God not have honor? I mean, again, and I say this with all humility and respect, think of it from Pharaoh's perspective, from his mindset, with his pantheon in mind. He hears people who's at the lowest layer of society, slaves, farmers with sheep, livestock, saying, I want to worship you. I want to worship one God. He says, what God is this? Who's got these low people who want to worship him, and he actually wants to be in association with these low people? Like seriously, that cannot be a God. A God that asks for detestable things like sheep to be sacrificed to him? He cannot be serious. There cannot be such a God. And there can surely not be a God that says that only him and nobody else should be worshipped. Because that cannot be a God. Because there, again, from his perspective, in all respect to our Father, who is the only name above all names, who seeks the heart of the people, who is humble before him, and who calls to him. But the conflict within the society was enormous. And it was not just simply a quick fix to go out of Egypt. Hence it took the destruction of the kingdom of Egypt in order to let his people go, to do the worship. Which is what is about to happen at some point near you in future. Jehovah was therefore 3 times scorned by the princes and Pharaoh. He was the God of the low class. He seeks their detestable livestock as a sacrifice. And he claims that he is who he is. He is set apart, not part of any pantheon. He seeks their worship for himself, and he is not shared. And they say, no, we can't do that. And he had to harden his heart from his mindset perspective, because he was too entangled in that world view, the one illustrated by this pyramid and this hierarchical structure. In addition, adding to this is the fact that our Father, why is he seeking them for praise and worship and to serve him in the wilderness? Psalm 22. You are set apart, enthroned, or you dwell, or you inhabit the praises of Israel. He dwells there. And then, with his people entangled within the system of Egypt, having all these idols among them, not being able to worship him fully holy as the only God, he's got no place to dwell. Because he dwells in the praises of Israel, where the people are praising him and only him and nobody else, because he is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. And with nobody claiming him as the name above all names, singing the songs that we sang this morning, with that not happening, there's no place for him to dwell. Because he seeks that. Because he's a relational El, not the one-sided fake one that only need service, lip service. He wants this intimate relationship. So the idols of Egypt gave the people of Israel a shortness of spirit. They sought his deliverance, but they stopped worshipping him. He thus had to destroy the kingdom of darkness to rescue his people and return them to a life of worship. And as we start preparing for Passover, we're actually preparing our lives and our hearts for a life of worship. And we're reminded of Luke 18. But when the Son of Adam comes, speaking of our Messiah's second return, shall he find faith on earth? The commentators on this verse have very different opinions, but it's clear that this is a big verse. How is it possible that there cannot be any faith left on earth at the end of time when it comes? Well, from the Egypt story, we know why. The Egypt story is telling us because the people got so entangled in the system of worship of the idols of Egypt that they lost faith in the deliverer. They were seeking deliverance and crying for that, but they've missed the deliverer. But then Moses came. And Moses is a type of the Messiah. And so this warning comes to each one of us, that as we see time approaching and as we see the kingdom of darkness and Pharaoh and his princes gathering their forces, building their pyramid of hierarchical structure of strength and might, building all the different idols of our time into it, that people that says we are serving a set-apart God who's unique, who actually loves sheep and many other things that goes with it, truly he is a remnant. And we have to encourage each other in our path of faith. Because without each other, encouraging one another, motivating each other, keep hanging in there, then we might lose our faith. This is what this verse is saying. It might get so bad. I'm going to conclude with one verse, one piece of encouragement from a funny source about our Father's appearance and our Messiah's appearance in future. It comes from the book of Esdras. Esdras is written by Ezra. It was in the King James version of the 1611 version of the Bible. It's only removed from the Bible a few years ago. So it was part of Scripture up until about 150 years ago. Then the book of Esdras was removed. But it's the parallel section of what Ezra wrote to what John saw in his revelation, which is accounted for us in Revelation 7. So you can read Revelation 7, which is John's version, or you can read Ezra's version, as written here. And they are two witnesses to the same event. And I, Esdras, or Ezra, saw upon the Mount of Zion a great people, whom I could not number. And they all praised Jehovah with song. Who would like to be in that company? Amen. And in the midst of them there was a young man of a high stature, taller than all the rest. And upon every one of their heads he set crowns, and was more exalted, which I marveled at greatly. So I asked the angel and said, Sir, what are these? And he answered and he said to me, These be they that have put off the mortal clothing and put on the immortal, and have confessed the name of God. Phew. So now they are crowned and received palms. Sukkot. I mean, when you see that, you see Sukkot. I mean, it's just like a dead giveaway there. Then said I unto the angel, What young man is that crowneth them and giveth them palms in their hands? This is Ezra. Ezra is before the break in your Bible, eh? So he answered and said unto me, It is the Son of God, whom they have confessed in the world. So our Father in His great wisdom revealed this to Ezra. Ezra wrote this up. He wrote many prophecies up in both 1 Ezra and 2 Ezra. Esdras. And this is one of the prophecies. But then the final sentence there. Then began I greatly to commend them that stood so stiffly for the name of the Father. So each person who confesses the Son of Elohim, Yeshua or Messiah, up until the end, many years ago, there was a guy called Ezra who prayed for you. Imagine that. What is Ezra famous for? What did Ezra do? He recovered the Torah, he built the temple. Who was his father? And his father, great father and great grandfather? Aaron. He was high priest. He was in the biological line of Aaron through Pinchas. So he was high priest, or could have been a high priest if there was a functioning table. And he prayed for everyone. He stood stiff for the name of our Father. Our Father that's in heaven, thank you that you are revealing the end from the beginning. And that we, in a time such as this, can pray for each other in freedom. That we can worship your name and your name alone. And that we can encourage each other that in times when it might become tough, where we cannot do this anymore freely, that we will still stand for the name of the Father. Thank you for Ezra who has prayed for us. Thank you for your Son and what your Son has done and what He will do at His reappearance. And thank you that we can be part of that congregation. I pray, Father, that you will reveal to us the idols that is in and among us, where our eyes have become so blinded because of the hardness of the world, because of the system that we are in, that we don't even recognize them anymore. That you will help us through your Ruach to see those idols and to deal with them. Help us to worship you as who you are, your name, your identity, your being, set apart for you and you alone. Because you are Yodai, and you are guiding us to pass over to a time of spiritual battle. But you are not unfamiliar with who we are, and therefore you will give us courage for those who are seeking courage. You will strengthen our hearts for those who are seeking your strength and to be encouraged by you. And therefore we pray, Father, that you will encourage us. You will help us to encourage each other, also those that does not know your name yet, that we might be the fishermen, the hunters that will go out and search for those beloved souls from every hole and nook where they might be and bring them to the light while there is time. We thank you for your word and for your living Torah, and may your word endure forever. Pray this in the wonderful name of our Messiah Yeshua. Amen.